Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another episode of Intuitive Angling, and thank you very much for checking today's video out and spending a little bit of time with me. Always very grateful for that. And guys, today we're going to be having a conversation and a discussion about arguably the most famous jerkbait in the world, the Megabass Vision 110. I'm going to give you guys tips and advice on how to fish it. I helped design this lure over 25 years ago, so I've got, without a doubt, probably more time fishing it than any fisherman in the country does. And I got some secrets and some tips I want to pass along to you guys to really help you get the most out of this bait. So we're going to get into that in today's video here. Now, I'll tell you a little backstory here before we get started on it. Well, I've been with Megabass since 1992 on the pro staff there. I was the first pro staff member they had. And when they started out, they were starting out. They were not near the company they are today as far as size goes, and they were, in the process of developing their product line, which it's a continuing process even to this day. And back in the late 1990s, I was, trying to get them to, design a jerkbait. With the bait technology that they had and the attention to detail and just the quality craftsmanship, I just knew they could make the best jerkbait in the country out there. So, started working with them a little bit. I had a lot of my own custom built, like rogues and long A's and stuff that I've weighted, that I specifically weighted myself, and custom paint colors and all that type of stuff. Put them together and started working with them to design, a jerkbait that would be the most superior jerkbait ever made as far as in terms of quality and fish catching ability. And this was the product of that. This was the result of that Yuki Ito, the owner of Megabass and the chief designer, came up with. He basically took the information that I provided, what we needed, and with his expertise and knowledge and design and creation, he came up with the Megabass Vision 110 as you see today. So I've been fishing them since the late 1990s, before they even became well known at all. So given that, what I want to do is I want to pass along some I guess you could consider them basic, but they're advanced at the same time, some tips on catching fish on this bait, because I think a lot of people, they don't really understand why this bait is as good as it is. One of the biggest things about the Vision 110, guys, is it has an internal balancing system. This was the first jerkbait that ever had that. Before, all jerkbaits just had BBs inside of them that went back and forth. But the Vision 110 actually has a balancing system with tungsten ball bearings in there, 2 of them. And when you cast the lure, the tungsten ball bearings, I don't know if you can see back there, but they transfer to the back of the lure, and this makes the lure cast extremely easy. And that's always been one of the biggest downfalls of a jerkbait, is they cast like potato chips. But the Vision 110 took that away. And then once you begin your retrieve, the ball bearings move forward and allow you to maximize and attain your depth quicker like that. Also creates just sort of a really unique action to it. That's one of the biggest parts about it, along again with the profile of the bait, the action of the lip design just right, all that type of stuff. So a little bit about the specs on this bait here as far as the depth attainment. When you're talking about how deep the Megabass Vision 110 runs, it depends on the length of your cast, and it depends on the line size that you're using. If you're using, say, 6-pound test fluorocarbon, I use 6-pound test. I use Seaguard and VizX on all my Megabass 110s. But if you use like 6-pound test line, and you make a really, really long cast, say like you can cast as far as you can with the wind, and you work it properly and have the right rod direction when you're working the bait down, you can get a Vision 110 down to probably that 8, 9, maybe even 10-foot range on a super, super long cast. That's sort of the depth attainment, but a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people fish it on too heavy a line, and they get half that depth out there. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make with the Vision 110 is they use too heavy a line. They use 10 and 12-pound test fluorocarbon, which is way too heavy for this bait overall. So from that standpoint, the length of your cast and the line size determines, how far this bait is going to get down there. Now, what I want to do is here, I want to talk a little bit about how to really maximize this lure as far as action and depth attainment that you get on there, and the type of action that you do want to put on it, to get the most out of the bait. Now, first of all, before I get into this, if you guys have watched any of my videos before, you know that the only rod I fish jerkbaits with, or 98% of them, I do fish the big Megabass Canard on a bait caster because it's a 7-inch long lure. But for my Megabass Vision 110 fishing, it's all done on the Megabass whip snake spinning rod. This is the Levante whip snake. It's a 6 foot 11-inch sort of a medium action spinning rod. And I usually couple it up with anywhere between 6 to 8 pound test line, which is key, guys. Now, one of the things that I want to tell you about this is when you're wanting to catch the most bass on a Megabass Vision 110, the equipment is critical, guys. You have got to learn how to fish this bait on a spinning rod. If you think that that you can do it better on a bait caster out there, and you'll probably say, well, Randy, you're full of crap because I catch a ton of fish on the Megabass Vision 110 on a bait caster. You'd catch even more than a ton of fish on a spinning rod. Your success and the number of bites that you get will increase by 25% if you go to a spinning rod, simply because of the action that you can impart on it, the distance, the additional distance of the cast that you can make with it, and everything that goes with it. It's a superior piece of equipment to fish the Megabass Vision 110 on. Now, as far as working the bait, a lot of people, when they're working a Vision 110, it's just, most people working on a bait caster and, they throw it out there and just jerk, jerk, pause, jerk, jerk, pause. Guys, that is just like a serviceable way of working it, but you're limiting the bait 50% if you do that. If you go down to 6 to 8 pound test line, I rarely use over 8 pound test line. You're not only going to get better action out of the lure, it's going to be more lifelike, you're going to get more depth out of it. Now, there's 3 different ways to work a Megabass Vision 110, depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. The first way, guys, is when you cast it out there and you want to jerk it straight down like that. So you're jerking it straight down, straight to the water. And this is when you want that bait to have maximum depth attainment. Say for example, you're fishing in the winter with it and you want to get it as deep as you possibly can. You've got to make the longest cast that you can and jerk that bait straight down to the water. The combination of having a longer cast and a longer distance for that bait to get down, along with jerking it down all the time like that, you're going to get your maximum attainment. Now, say for example, you're fishing a lake that, doesn't have as clear water. Maybe you've got, 2 to 3 foot visibility and you've got your structures in like less than 5 or 6 foot of water. Then you don't necessarily want it to go that deep. So then at that point, I'll put it maybe on 8 pound test line. I'll make my cast out there. And when I jerk it parallel to the water like that. So my rod stays at like a 9 o'clock position and I'm jerking it like that. That way it's gonna allow that bait to not only have really good action on it, but it's also gonna keep the bait up a little bit more. And finally, if I don't want the bait to go very deep at all, and this is something that maybe I'm using for smallmouth up north, I'll make my cast out there and then I jerk it up like that. I'm jerking it up almost like at a 10-degree angle like that. And that way the 110 stays like, it doesn't go over about 3 feet deep. And also when as you jerk it down, sideways or up, it also alters the action of the jerk bait. If you jerk it when you're going down like this, your jerk bait is going to have more of a vertical downward action with not as much side to side. If you jerk it sideways, depending upon how hard you jerk it, it's going to have more darting action like that. And if you jerk it up like that, it's going to give it the maximum darting action. It's going to go back and forth, harder than it ever will with any other rod angle. And there's a time and place for this. Like I said, I use all 3 depending upon the situations that I want to counter there. Another thing with the Vision 110, guys, another secret is weighting the lure like this. Now, for the most part, one of the things you'll find out when you buy a Vision 110 out of the box, and also, guys, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description. If you guys want to order some 110s, using that link's a good way to support the channel. But the rate of float or suspension or anything like that with the 110, most 110s out of the package will slow float up like that. Some of them will suspend and not float much. It has a lot to do with your finish, the paint finish, because there's over 100 different colors of 110s, and some of the paint finishes, whether they're a flat finish or metallic or clear, add a little or sometimes a little more, a little less, weight to the lure. So the exactual, rate of rise with the bait or suspension will vary with the color that you use. So it's really important to have a good supply of suspend strips on it. Now, when you put a suspend strip on it, guys, you want to put it right behind this first hook here. Don't want to put it back by the second one. Put it right behind the first hook there, and then you can adjust the rate of suspension that you want, floater like that. Preferably, guys, I'll tell you one little trick, little bonus for watching this video. I like my jerk baits to sink. So I usually weight them to the point where the bait slowly sinks about like that. And the reason I like it to sink is, number one, I can get the bait deeper if I want it to. I can let it sink down before I begin my retrieve. And also, I've never seen a injured bait fish float up to the surface. Most of the time they're sinking like that. So that's another good indication with it. But guys, it's a pretty user-friendly bait out there. As far as, jerk baits go, I mean, you can catch fish doing a lot of different things with it, but biggest piece of advice I'll give you guys as far as if you want to maximize your efficiency and catch the most on this 110 is downsize your fishing line and use a spinning rod. Those are going to be the two things that will outproduce any other thing that you can do. Now, I'm not saying that you can't catch fish. If you love to fish a bait caster on 12-pound test line and you think you can catch enough fish on it, and if you're stubborn and bullheaded and don't want to try a spinning rod, stay with it. But if you want to maximize the number of bites that you get on the 110, go with the spinning rod. Also, a spinning rod is a far superior rod to fight the fish on, because one of the things that you'll find out with the jerkbait, like the 110, is a lot of times the fish will grab the back hook here, especially on lakes that have heavy fishing pressure. So you have to fight these fish gently with them, and that's why it's important to have a softer tip on there like that. You want a tip that flexes and bends pretty good like that. And it's just a lot more forgiving if you have those fish that are not hooked very well with that. But guys, you can't beat it. There's a reason why there's not a pro fisherman in this country that has never fished a 110. They may say they're sponsored by whatever company. I can promise you they got these in their box, because it is without a doubt the best jerkbait that's ever been made in the history of jerkbait fishing. And there's a lot of other options. You got the 110 plus 1, you got the 1 plus 2, but for the sake of today's video, it's just the classic Megabass Vision 110. Still produces now like it did when it first came out there. So anyway, just a few simple tips with it. There's a ton more that you can get into. I've done a lot of jerkbait videos, as you guys know, and you can refer back to some of those, but that's just a few basic tips and advice I'd like to give you when fishing the Megabass 110. Again, guys, link in the description to Tackle Warehouse if you want to pick you some up. Colors, there's not a color that I like better than anything else. I mean, Pro Blue like this is probably the one. I put a little chartreuse on the side of this, but this is probably the one I've caught the most on. But they all work really good. So hope it helps out. We'll talk to you later.